Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of What's Up Doc. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, and I'm a board-certified family physician. My show, What's Up Doc, is a production of Muslim Network TV, the only network focusing on Muslims broadcasting in North America. You can find our episodes on our website at muslimnetwork.tv and on our YouTube page. You can also find us streaming almost daily on Roku TV, Fire TV, Galaxy 19, Apple TV as well. Today, I have a really important episode, and we're going to be talking about mental health in our adolescents and our teens, as well as community services that are available to our teenagers in schools. According to the CDC, the suicide rate among children between the ages of 10 to 17 increased by 70%, that's 70, between 2006 and 2016. There are unsung heroes that are working at our schools every day to help identify and treat or link to treatment for our students in these mental health crisis and mental health distress. Joining us today to talk about this is Lillian Eltayen. She's an associate clinical social worker, currently in her third year working as a social worker in California. Lillian has been in the mental health field for 7 years, working in nonprofit research and education. She received her bachelor's from UC Irvine in psychology and social behavior and her MSW or Master's for Social Work from San Jose State University. Lillian supports 3 schools ranging from grades K through 8, where she provides individual and group counseling services, crisis intervention, case management, attendance intervention, social emotional learning, and more. Her role is to bridge the gaps between schools, home, and community for students and their families while collaborating with district support programs and community agencies. You can follow her social work journey on Instagram at syriancali.socialworker, school social worker. Welcome, Lillian. I'm sorry, I messed up your social media handle there at the end, but
it's all right. I see it on the screen
for everybody to see. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Dr.
As I mentioned in the intro, as I mentioned in the intro, mental health in our schools and for our children have really suffered and has, in my experience at least, only gotten worse since the pandemic with distance learning and students not being able to come into schools and have some of the services that they normally would have because of distance learning. And so for those of our viewers who may not be familiar or may not have worked with a school social worker before, let's talk a little bit about what that means, what it entails. I mentioned it a little bit in your bio, but I want us to go into a little bit more detail because you do a lot at the school to help our students. And so I'll let you tell us what you're doing day to day with our students.
Of course. So school social work is a specialized profession in the very broad social work field. And what we do as school social workers is our overall role is to bridge the gaps between the school, the home, and the community. So you might find us doing case management, providing social emotional learning in the classrooms, providing individual counseling, group counseling, crisis intervention, just a range of things depending on what the need is. We're not only serving the students in the school, but we're serving their families, their guardians. We're supporting teachers and other school staff and just kind of helping them guide the process when we have individuals that are really in need of our support, not only school social worker support, but the school community.
And that is so important. You mentioned that it's not just the students, it's also the teachers and communities. When you talk about bridging gaps between those 3 groups, the teachers, the school, the community, et cetera, can you give us an example of something that you would do that brings those 3 together? In your bio, we talked about school attendance, for example, and I know that has been an issue, especially as somebody who sees pediatric patients. And I'm having to write school excuses when you came in for a 5-minute visit and can easily go back to school, things like that. So I do definitely see the impact of school attendance on one side of it. But tell me about what it looks like on your side of things, working in the schools and how you're able to intervene.
Sure. So I will be kind of referencing when we were in person, but also being distance learning. So with attendance, that comes with a whole broad spectrum of things that could come up. There could be health issues, there could be transportation concerns. Sometimes a family just gets up and has to move for whatever reason, and we're not notified, and the school is kind of searching for this family. We can't get a hold of, the parents, the guardians, emergency contacts. So then that's kind of where we come in, and we might go do a home visit. My district is also very amazing. We have a whole attendance department, so we work with them a lot when it comes to things like attendance. Another thing that might come up where we're bridging these gaps would be housing is another big one. So we have a lot of families in the area that I serve where families are getting evicted or they're experiencing homelessness for whatever reason it is. So what we do is we work with the family. We try to support them with getting stabilized. We've had families that are couch surfing, living in cars. So we try to get them connected with our community agencies that are in the neighborhood they live in so that they can easily get transportation there, meet with a caseworker, do what they need to do to get stabilized in their housing situation. And for example, like a great organization that I work with is Salvation Army. So they have a transitional housing program in the city that I live in. So what I would do is if I understand that a family is experiencing homelessness, I would refer them to Salvation Army, explain the process, explain the requirements, what to expect, and then they would have a caseworker connect with them or a social worker if that's who is working for that program, and they would work with the family. So it's basically you see that the school for most families is the safe place. It's the first stop you go to share that you are struggling in some way. So then it would be depending who you share the information with, they might think, oh, we have a social worker here. Let me share your information with them if that's okay with you, and then they will contact you and get you support if they can. So that's kind of an example that I experience often is housing, where we are working very consistently with the community. Another one would also be mental health. That's just a whole other thing that families have to navigate. And I mean, you're a doctor based on insurance. That's a whole other story. So we support families like in California, if they have
Absolutely.
Medi-Cal, then we try to get them services and referrals that fit for Medi-Cal. If a family has private insurance, then we navigate that. Kaiser's a whole other way. So we just try to work with the family based on what they have access to.
Awesome. So it sounds like essentially you're identifying problems either from the student or family coming directly asking for help, or by reaching out on your end or on the teacher's end to families if they notice a problem and offering assistance, and then really bridging, like you said, connecting them with services in the community, because I'm sure there are so many available services within the community that we're not tapping into or that families are not aware of to even start the process. Just like you said, with mental health counseling, I see so many patients who have their kids are being bullied, they're having self-esteem issues, parents are noticing that there's some differences, they're worried about depression. And a lot of times they do start with the schools, right? They've been reported at schools. And then after, when they feel like they're not getting what they need through the school services, they're coming to us next. So really what you're saying and what I'm hearing is that at the school is really the first line of catching and having the opportunity to intervene.
Yes. So, I mean, it's just a great first place to go if you have that support there, because then you have one person who's aware of everything that is in your community. And if they might not know of something, they're going to find a way to figure it out for you and then work with you in that process. So it's not necessarily like a hand holding process, but it's a let me guide you and give you a heads up on what's to come, and we'll go from there. So, for instance, with mental health, like I do counseling, a number of our social workers do counseling. We have some licensed marriage family therapists that are providing mental health therapy. And the thing with schools is that we really want to get them something more consistent if that's what they need. So that's why schools, we probably do more short-term work because we have so many breaks in the year. We have a 2-week break. Some districts have 3-week breaks during the holidays. We have,
Yeah.
for instance, we have ski week, so we get a week off in February. We have spring break, and then summer we have the long break. So if we have students that are in need of more consistent and frequent mental health therapy, unfortunately, we can't offer that. So it's a good way for us to work with them and maybe provide that counseling, do some short-term intervention, and then say, hey, how is this working out for you? Do you feel like, and this would be to the parents and guardians and also the student if they're old enough to kind of discuss that with you, but do you need more? Do you need someone that you can work with long-term, as opposed to, hey, you're in 8th grade, you're going to a high school, I don't work there, so I'm not able to support you, kind of thing. So that's why we really do like to get them referred out, just so that if it's in the best interests of the student, then that's what we do.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. It's a very valuable resource, and we're just touching, really, I feel, the tip of the iceberg of what you provide for students and families and communities. I want to jump to talking about this report that you shared with me from the ACLU, talking about, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the importance of the work that you do, like I said, but let's talk about the support that you're able to provide with the numbers of school social workers that are around, around the nation. I don't know at your school, for example, how many school social workers are there, and then let's talk about kind of nationally what that looks like.
So that's a great question and a good topic to bring up. My district is pretty ahead of the game, I would say. We have 16, actually we might have more. I can't remember the exact count, but we definitely have over 15 school social workers in my district, and we're serving different areas of the district. So we have one that is supporting our foster youth program. We have another that is serving a single high school. And then we have a few social workers serving our low density schools, which means that there's not as high of a need at those school sites. And then I am part of a program that serves medium to high density schools, which means that these are the schools that where we have a majority of the students coming from families that are coming from a lower socioeconomic background. So they qualify 40% or more qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that's kind of how we determine what schools are considered medium high density. And then that's probably where most of the social workers are. So for instance, I'm serving 2 Title I schools. And for those who don't know, Title I is, again, where the majority of the student population come from a lower socioeconomic background. And, schools will have families fill out financial income forms and number of household, and they determine it that way. And in regards to
sorry to interrupt, Lillian. So are those terms that you just mentioned, is that determined by the district, by the school? How would somebody going to that school know that, what kind of school there are?
So I don't know. I don't think it's like openly discussed in the community, like, okay, oh, that's a Title I school, but it's something that we would know. I'm sure it's not something that's hidden, but what it means is that schools that are identified as Title I will get extra funding to provide more programs and resources to serve these students.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So, and then in regards to the ACLU study, so ACLU published a report that was called, I believe, More Counselors, Less Cops, something along those lines. But what it discusses is the different helping professions, how we need to meet proper ratios. And the nation is not meeting that. We have more cops in schools than we do nurses. We have more cops in schools than we do social workers. So if I can have a graphic pulled up, I will explain what we're looking at. So this is from the ACLU data report, and this data was gathered from the Federal Civil Rights Data Collection. And what it's showing is that a majority of the nation is not meeting ratio needs. So the School Social Work Association of America recommends a ratio of 250 students to 1 social worker, but it seems to be that that's not the case in many parts of the country. And again, this is data from 2015, 2016. Things could have improved, things may have not, I'm not quite sure, but this is what we're looking at as the most recent data. I will say school social work is a growing field, but it just depends on the district and where they're willing to put their funding. And that's kind of what we're looking at when it comes to social workers in schools. And it's just really important for us to have more social
Wow.
workers in schools.
Absolutely. And just like, without even really going into details of each state, you can see it's red across the board,
Yeah.
which according to the key means that they're not meeting that recommendation. I mean, a glance just kind of tells you that we are not or as of 2015, 16, we were not where we needed to be in meeting those numbers. And as we mentioned, some of the services that you're describing and that you're providing for families at your school, those are not happening. Those are not going on at a level that's really able to help the community, the families, the teachers, the students to navigate a lot of the things that affect one's ability to be in the school, to be able to learn properly, to be able to really move forward in a positive way. And as I mentioned earlier in this discussion, with this past year, having been students not being able to come in, social distancing due to social distancing measures, and students not being able to interact with each other, with their teachers. What changes have you seen this past year as far as what students are experiencing, what teachers are experiencing, and how are you adjusting to that?
So teachers are definitely having a lot thrown at them, and I've listened into some of these board meetings. Parents are not happy, and you have some that are praising the teachers and some that are attacking them. Unfortunately, they are definitely having a lot on their plate, especially with all the sudden changes that came. And that brings stress. It brings, on top of all the stuff that everyone's experiencing already, it could also cause some burnout in our teachers. And then on the other end with our students, I've been noticing a lot of them are feeling more isolated. They are less motivated for sure. Attendance has been poor, whereas when it was in person, they had better attendance or their grades were better. And again, then you have students on the other end of the spectrum where distance learning is working out pretty great for them. Maybe they were more introverted or they had some sort of social anxiety. So being able to do school from home has benefited them. But the majority, I will say, are really struggling because this has completely interrupted their routine. Whether it came to just their school routine, after school extracurriculars, doing your sports, partaking in clubs and other activities, even something like going to tutoring. It just completely interrupted it, and everything is now virtual. And I've even had families where I try to get their student referred to like mentorship. They ask, is it in person? No. Okay, then I don't want it. I'm not interested at this time. So it's just gotten in the way. And unfortunately, a lot of our students have also been experiencing anxiety. So that's what's been going on.
I can only imagine. I mean, we've talked on this show and on this channel here about just mental health and how everyone's being affected, and we tend to focus on the adults in the room and how it's affecting us, and we tend to forget about the children and what's going on with them, how it's affecting their ability to perform as well as their mental and social needs. So I'm glad that we're touching on this a little bit. I do want to talk about how you're able to provide services now that things are virtual. But before we do that, we do need a break. So we'll come back and we'll start talking about that.
Sounds good.
You're watching What's Up Doc on Muslim Network TV, and we'll be back after a few minutes.
My wife, she's a professor at the University of Cincinnati, who's Catholic, and by her watching and listening to our 3-year-old son watch Adam's World, she ended up taking Kalima Shahada. She embraced Islam because she learned so much about Islam and the other prophets. It really affected our life in a great way, and because of Sound Vision and Adam's World, we're Muslims.
I took my Shahada 15 years ago, and I actually am from a rural part of Ohio. And so I found the catalog for Sound Vision, and I ordered the tapes and the CDs and the books, and I used those, and especially for my little daughter, that's how we basically learned our Islam, and Islam entered our hearts through the wonderful works of Sound Vision.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, brother. I just want you to know that I love the Sound Vision website, that a lot of times when I'm looking for information, especially as it relates to homelessness, domestic violence, and women issues, I go to that website, and then I see what you've written, and then I copy and paste it, and spread the word, because the wisdom is there, so I can't do any better than what Sound Vision has already done.
Sound Vision is our survival guide. It is the organization that provides skills for Muslims how to survive and thrive in this community here in the US.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Anam, I'm in 11th grade, and I grew up with Adam's World, and what it taught me was unity, respect, and love for the Muslim Ummah.
Adam's World is the greatest show ever made. Take me to the Kaaba, man. I love that puppet.
Welcome back to What's Up, Doc. I'm your host, Dr. Al-Barwani, and today we are joined by Lillian Eltayen, and she is a school social worker, and we've been talking about the importance of the work that school social workers have been doing before the pandemic, and then definitely during the pandemic. We were talking before the break about the changes that you've seen as far as what teachers are going through, what students are going through. It sounds like there's increased stress and anxiety all around, and isolation or feelings of isolation, that the social distancing has left our students feeling isolated rather. And we were about to talk about how you've had to adjust some of the things that you were doing in person to now being virtual, and making sure that these students are not falling through the cracks and still getting the help that they need, maybe now more than ever.
Yeah, it's been a big change because social work is such a in-person profession, very face-to-face. I'll meet you in the community, I'll do a home visit, I'll meet you at the school, whatever it is. And I will give credit to everyone working in schools. Everyone has been extremely innovative and very creative in what they're doing. Teachers have been very creative, admin, and my fellow colleagues, my fellow social workers have been doing amazing things. Some of the things that I've been doing on my own and with my fellow social workers that we share schools is we do a thing called virtual recess on Zoom or lunch bunch. We have different names depending on the site. But what we do is we provide students with a open, free environment on Zoom to interact with their peers and interact with us. So what we do is we do like a feelings check-in, see how everyone's doing, let them know if they want to chat after, we're available. And then we just proceed to playing games, and just, you can have your mics off, you can have the chat box open, we have it monitored, and they just play games and they have fun, and we do different things on there, and just try to find things that are very interactive for them where they get excited. Like we've even found, a virtual escape room. I had a friend from graduate school who's also a school social worker share a virtual escape room, and I did that with my middle school students, and they absolutely loved it.
How fun. That's something that is so creative. Absolutely. I didn't even think that was like, I'd never even heard of something like that. That is pretty neat.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we're doing just to, give some social interaction. And then something that I have done, and I only did it once so far, but with my middle school, I thought, psychoeducation is probably really important at this time. And I feel like middle school, these students are experiencing anxiety and these other emotions. We might as well educate them about it. So what I did was, myself and a school counselor, we put together a mental health / wellness workshop, and I presented the first topic a couple weeks ago on anxiety and coping skills. This was also a presentation, but we had students, I let them know that this is more educational, and if they had more concerns or they wanted to speak to someone, to just save that for a later time where they get that privacy, just because it was open to all students at the middle school. And what I did was I presented on anxiety, how it affects the body, the fight, flight, freeze response, and just went through that whole process. And then I also talked to them about coping skills and the importance of learning and trying different coping skills and basically adopting these things at a young age, so that as we get older and experience the different things that life throws at us, they'll be able to better handle it and cope with these difficult emotions that we as humans experience. And the main thing I wanted to get across to them was, you are not alone in this feeling. It is a human response. It happens to all of us, and it looks different for all of us. So that had a good response from the students, and we let them send questions to us in the chat, just to myself and the school counselor, and then we would answer it and just make sure everyone's privacy was safe when we answered these questions. But the students were openly on Zoom and able to learn and get some questions answered by us.
What an important thing to share with your students. Absolutely important, I think, that we start early, as you said, teaching our students, teaching our youth what it means to experience anxiety, to experience depression, so that, just like you said, they're able to identify that. Because sometimes, as you mentioned, even in adults, it's hard to identify, and it doesn't look the same across the board. There's no one way to present. But as an individual, understanding that there may be concerns for depression or anxiety, that's a good start, so that they can reach out and ask for help if other people are not able to identify that someone needs help. Which brings me to my next question, which is, as far as identifying students or youth that may be at risk, is that something that, as you mentioned, you're teaching them how to identify it and be able to self-refer? But how are there any screening procedures or anything that you have set up to catch students who might not be speaking up, who may not be coming to you to say, hey, I need some help? What are some of the things that either teachers or parents should be looking for, or maybe even yourself as you evaluate students?
Great. So when it comes to this topic, there are different ways that students are referred to us. We do have a referral form, or actually a concern form, that teachers or other staff can fill out to refer a student if they have concerns about their academics, their behaviors, or their social emotional well-being. And some schools have student support teams, and we have meetings where we will maybe look over these referrals, discuss what would be appropriate interventions, and then decide who's going to take on the case. And, you know, should it be the school psychologist because maybe the student needs an IEP test, so a test to see if they qualify for an individualized education plan and be part of special education. So a referral form is one way. Another way is students might ask to speak with a school counselor or a school social worker, whomever it is on site. But again, we are only able to see students twice for counseling before we do need to get consent from the parents or the guardians. And a final way, so you bring up screening tools, which is a good thing, because before we started distance learning, we were utilizing a screening tool called SABRS. And what the screening tool did was it was by the school's choice. So we would kind of pitch it to the schools that we serve. And if the staff was on board, then we would have them fill out these screeners for each of their students. And it would cover behaviors, social behaviors, emotional behaviors, and then academic behaviors. And based on that screening tool, it would, basically spit out the data, and we would be able to identify students that were externalizers, meaning students that were the obvious ones. Maybe they have been suspended a number of times. They, do attention-seeking behaviors in class. They're very obvious in their behaviors. But then it also identified our internalizers. Maybe our students that keep to themselves, look sad quite often. They might show up to class tearful. So it's able to identify both of those, because sometimes the internalizing students, they just fall under the radar because they're not asking for help, or they're just not obvious in their needs as other students are.
Absolutely. That's great. I love to hear that there is a system to kind of address different kinds of ways that we see people in general, and including our youth, respond to stresses at home maybe, or issues that they may be having that they need help with, as you mentioned, either through acting out, or simple cues like attendance. Even lack of attendance, I feel, is sometimes a good sign that there may be some trouble or some issues at home that are unaddressed.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier in this episode about home visits. Now, a lot of times, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in my experience, I've done home visits myself, and it's not always well received, because sometimes the person you're visiting thinks that they're in trouble. And really it's not about that. It's really just checking and understanding and getting a 360 view of the person's life, and that includes their home life. And I'm sure this happens more with you than with me, that when you show up at their door, they're thinking that you're here to take away their child, that you're with a child protective service of some kind. Let's talk about that a little bit. How do you reassure parents that you're there to help, that you're on their side, and to take away that stigma that may be attached with your visit and you trying to take their children away?
Yeah, so it's a lot about making ourselves very known on the campus, being seen, making sure we have good rapport with the families that might get referred to us. So if a family is hesitant to work with us, it might be just about more so building that relationship with them, maybe greeting them if we see them. But with my district, we typically don't do the home visits where we just show up at the house. We do attempt to let the family know that we're coming, or we even try to schedule. So we might say, hey, we've noticed student hasn't been attending. Is it okay if we come do a home visit and maybe talk more about this? Because again, we just want to meet them where they're at. Maybe they can't make it, they have work, or they get off at a certain time, or they don't have transportation, whatever reason it is. We want to be able to meet them where they're at. So we typically do try to call, but again, we have those instances where we can't get a hold of the family, so we do show up. And thankfully, so far, I haven't had terrible experiences, but I have had families kind of like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now, or it's not the right time. So I basically, give them my card, very friendly, just let them know I'm from the school. I really emphasize, hey, I'm from the school, and I'm here regarding this, so that there's not something for them to question or get a little paranoid about. Social work obviously has that, the first thing that comes to mind from what we see in film and television and other sources is CPS, removing the child from the home, being involved with the court, dealing with parents, things like that. And the goal is really to not do that. We don't want to take children away from their families. But again, that's under Child Protective Services. School social workers are a completely different part of that social work, that broad social work field. CPS is just one component of it. So you also have medical social workers. That's a completely different component. So it really it's about really explaining yourself and really getting out there what is school social work. So people from my team, other social workers, they have made brochures that we give to families. We make sure that we maybe do a presentation for the school if they would like it at like back to school night or whatever events that the schools put on, to really just put ourselves out there and, just, hey, we're here for support. And I'm not bashing any other type of social work field. They're there for a reason. Children need this support for a reason.
Exactly. Absolutely. I agree with you, because they're just like you said, that every field within the social work umbrella, I guess, is there for a reason. And if they're showing up, it's not necessarily that you're in trouble. They may need more information. At the end of the day, they're there to be an advocate and to help you and the student who may not have a voice as well. So I want us to talk a little bit about some of the services that you have. And we talked a little bit beforehand about how you work with refugees. Being in Northern California, you do see a lot of refugee population at your school. And I want us to come back to that after the break. We're going to take a short break here. And then when we come back, we're going to start talking about that. You're watching What's Up Doc on Muslim Network TV. We'll be back after this short break.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adam. You remember me? I appeared in so many episodes that Sound Vision has put on the market. No matter what. Hey, what's happening? Hey, oh, sorry. Lockdown is what it is. Well, continuing here. In this lockdown, Sound Vision never stops thinking about you, the viewer. We'll have to get back into production again, online and inline. Everybody in their own space, even me. Although I'm stuck with Lanisa.
Salam! Salam! Salam!
I know, you were shocked too. Well, let me continue. This is what I was going to say. Salam! 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 Cut! 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 Finally, I get my own screen time again. Thank God. And so we invested in new equipment to bring you even better production with new songs and new singers and animations. Well, here are a few clips. And Sound Vision has brought all this into your home, making Islamic values and teachings easy. And if you know me, Adam, a multi-talented actor, well, sometimes I'm an actor and the reporter and the... Oh, that's enough. Let's move on to the next section. Well, you can watch these new episodes on our new app at www.adamsworldapp.com. We have previews happening every day on Muslim Network TV. Sound Vision has been serving generations, moving and changing with the times. We are all faithfully connected. That is a huge blessing. Your donation helps keep these programs available now and into the future. We take this job of helping tomorrow's Muslims today seriously, and you should too. Today, we need your help. Children absorb and learn from everything they encounter. Make that wholesome, positive, grounded in our faith. Together, we can accomplish our goal of raising better Muslims, better neighbors, and better citizens. Please donate generously. It's an investment in our future. But to finish, let me tell you, there are new scripts of my new mission. And it is something that I enjoy talking about. My new mission is space. Houston, we do not have a problem. Salam, see you soon. Me too.
Welcome back to What's Up Doc on Muslim Network TV. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, and today we are joined by Lillian Eltayen, who is a school social worker, and she is currently practicing in California. And before the break, Lillian, we were talking about how you're helping the refugee population. I understand from our conversation that there is quite a number of refugees that you are helping in your community. And so for those of our audience who may either be a refugee or working with that population, I think it might be helpful to share with us a little bit about what kind of resources and some of the things that you've had to help bridge between these families and the schools.
So my district does have a high refugee population, and we have refugee families, asylee families coming from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, and then even countries like Ukraine. And I believe I met one student from Sudan as well. So there's other countries. Also, non-accompanied minors from South America as well are in our district. So we have been supporting these students in different ways and supporting the families, because sometimes we get a family that just came in from the country, and it can also range. It could be that they don't have the supplies that they need. It could be that, I experienced a student that had come from Afghanistan last year, very young child, and they were in the wrong grade, but they don't have birth certificates from the village that they came from. So then that was also a whole other thing that we had to figure out. So that's just an example of kind of some of the things that I've encountered. But the district, what we do to support them is we have a department that has a team dedicated to supporting our refugees, and we work with them quite often. We collaborate with them for support because they actually have hired people that speak Pashto, speak Dari, Farsi, Arabic. They speak these variety of languages, Russian as well, to support these families, and we might collaborate with them to help get basically the American school culture and customs across to them. So, being tardy, attendance, why an attendance clerk might show up, why there's legal requirements of your child needing to attend school when they turn 5. Those are just some of the things that we do need to teach and explain to them. And we do have a lot of English language learners, so there's a lot of support and funding that goes into getting them extra tutoring, having them take extra English classes. And that's kind of the academic component. And then we do provide social emotional support. So that same refugee team, before distance learning, they would put on an intensive 2-week program where they would provide English classes. And they actually had me come in and support 1 year by providing social emotional lessons. So what I would do is I would go into each class. They had kinder through 12th grade, and I would provide lessons to them. For the older kids, I would do things on like code switching, how to ask for support. For the little ones, really identifying emotions, how our expressions can look different in our face and what they mean. So that was some of the work I did with them. And then, of course, the case management component. Again, some families come from really small cities and villages, and they never used a laptop. So distance learning was also a very difficult thing. Giving them a hotspot, explaining how to use it. Those are just, again, some of the things that we've encountered.
Wow, a lot of the things, it sounds like a lot of things that we tend to either take for granted or think about as everyday things here, but having to kind of break it down and communicate in both directions, really helping teachers understand different backgrounds and different cultures, and helping these people, families from different backgrounds and different cultures, understand the rules and expectations in the United States. So very, very valuable, Lillian. I want to talk about a few things that I've seen, or something that I think is really unfortunate. A lot of us have seen recently, and most recently that I've seen, it was widely publicized, is the case of how children are being either, I don't know if the right word would be mishandled or mistreated by police and public safety officers in the schools, or being asked to come to the schools to deal with situations with minors. We're talking about 9-year-old children. The most recent one, and this didn't happen out of school, this actually happened at the home, but I've seen instances where this does happen at the school as well, where the teachers are contacting police to come in and help with unruly children who are either acting out. Really, it's a cry for help, in my opinion. And instead of, again, in my opinion, addressing it in a way that is de-escalatory, to help find out what is the reason for this acting out, for this behavior, and helping the student, it now becomes this child is suddenly in handcuffs in the back of a patrol car and having been pepper sprayed. Yeah. And so I would like to hear your opinion on this, as far as your experience, if you've ever had to witness, maybe not hopefully nothing to the level that I just described, but similarly where you've had to kind of step in. And what would be, and I know these are a lot of questions, but the situation is just so bizarre and out of hand to me that I that I really want to see how we can do better as a community. If there are teachers watching, if there are parents watching, what would really be the ideal way to handle a situation like that as a school social worker?
So I will say some cities have social workers that are partnered with their police officers, and say had that situation a social worker had been there, it might have been handled very differently. It might have been that the police officers were just there on the side, but the social worker was the one speaking with the family, trying to de-escalate the child. But from my understanding, that wasn't the case. And unfortunately, what happened had happened, and that child is probably going to be traumatized for the rest of her life, not only based on what she had experienced, but we see police officers in a number of areas, and that might become a very triggering thing for her at that point, and for any other students that have had negative experiences with police officers. I will say that we do have in my district and many other districts, they have police or safety officers that support. But what the school social workers try to do is we try to prevent it from getting to that point. So I've had moments where young children in the classroom are having issues, they're flipping desks, throwing things. So the teacher is directed to basically, if something like that happens, to evacuate the classroom. Then an administrator might be called in if there's no social worker or counselor or other type of support. But there have been situations where I get called in and I'm able to go into the classroom, kind of start distracting the student a little bit. I've never felt in danger when I'm with these young students, and basically do some grounding with them without them really noticing. I might say like, hey, can you find me? Like, I've never been in here. Can you find me 5 red things in the classroom? And then they're like, oh yeah, I know this classroom. I'm here every day. So then they start wanting to show me things. I might play music. I might play calming sounds, just something to really de-escalate, because we want to regulate our physical reactions, and then maybe our mind will follow and our frontal lobe will turn back on. And I've had situations where I'm doing that, and then I see the safety officer like at the window, and I'm thankfully able to shoo them away. I'm like, oh no, I got this, we're good, we don't need to get it to that point. So I can't speak for every school social worker on their experiences, but if we're able to intervene and de-escalate, then that's a great thing. And I think districts are definitely doing more work around that, teaching staff about trauma response, how we should treat individuals that might be escalated. So that's kind of what we do. And I've noticed when I do have officers on campus and a student's escalated, is they're obviously a lot more hands-on, whereas we're not. We might try to keep distance, but keep an eye on the student, whereas, they might try to get very close to them. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And not to, what I want to stress is that you are trained in these situations to help de-escalate, to help really speak to children on a level that they can absorb, they can understand. And I want to use this as a point to say that, not to say that there isn't a space and a time for safety officers and police, but that they need more training. I think we've seen time and time again that their ability to deal with certain situations is definitely lacking, I think is where I'm just going to leave that. As far as what parents and families can do to advocate for more, or even to get a school social worker if they don't have one at their schools, do you have any recommendations? I would definitely want to end this on a positive note, in a way to help encourage our families to look for and to reach out to their school social workers for their services. So what can you leave us with?
Absolutely. So first things first, if you notice your child is struggling or they might have issues at school, I would definitely talk to your child and ask them, do you have one trusted adult on campus? Is there one person at school that you feel comfortable with that you can go to if you need help or support? It doesn't need to be the school social worker. It could be the custodian. It could be the school nurse, someone that works in the cafeteria. So I think that's one thing to really just pay attention to, because that's definitely something that we ask, because we might not be there all the time. I have 3 schools. I spend half a day at 2 schools every day. So, 1 or 2 people that they might identify as their safe person. For parents, if you are seeking support for your student, even for yourself, if you need case management, you need a referral for mental health services, a school social worker is a safe person to go to. I think the first place to go would be to go to your school office or call and ask, hey, do you guys have a school social worker, whether it's for the district or for that site, because school social workers might be employed district-wide and serving like the district in general, or they might be site-based serving that specific school and only that school, or like me from a program serving a number of schools. So definitely speak to someone, ask if they're there. In terms of advocating to get more school social workers hired, that would be something I want to say would be spoken about at a board meeting. So if you attend the school board meeting, the ones I go to, at least for my district, I know they leave room for public comment, and social wellness and mental health have been topics that have been brought up frequently. So, you know, it's been emphasized to parents that we have a number of programs going on. We have ways that we're supporting students. So we try to make ourselves known, but if you know you don't have a school social worker, try to look for the next best support person, whether it's a school counselor or a school psychologist. They might know of resources for you and your family.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lillian. I really appreciate you joining us today, and I really enjoyed our talk. You've enlightened us all on what you do and how important the work that you do is. And I hope that we were able to share that valuable information I'm happy that we were able to share that valuable information with our audience today. So we wish you every success in your career, Lillian.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm really glad we spoke about this.
Of course. Thank you for joining us in another episode of What's Up, Doc. You can watch this along with our other episodes on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Muslim Network TV and on our website at muslimnetwork.tv. I'm your host, Dr. Aalia Al-Barwani, and I'll see you next time on another episode of What's Up, Doc.